I quickly just want to introduce a few factors which influence our behavior, a few reasons why changing our behavior is quite difficult, but 4 key strategies which can help us try and encourage behavior change. Okay, so the first thing I want to cover is the external environment around us massively influences the decisions that we make. So to sort of illustrate this, I want to play a little quick game. Okay, can you raise your hand if you think square A is darker than B? Okay, imagine most people. I've seen this countless times. In fact, they're exactly the same color. It's just we perceive them to be different. Here's another example. Okay, you go into a coffee shop, which coffee do you buy? If you're anything like me, you probably go for the one in the middle of the road. Seems like a sensible choice. Okay, go to the next shop, which one do you buy? Well, probably the middle one. But so our decision has been influenced not by necessarily how much coffee we want or the price, but by the environment around the decision, the context. So marketers have known this for generations. For instance, when margarine was first created, it was white. But in taste tests, people thought it tasted funny. So what they did is they didn't change the taste, but they changed the color. They made it yellow. Suddenly it tasted great. It tasted like butter. So marketers have known this for forever, how our external environment influences the changes, the decisions that we make. But also, so marketers are doing this consciously, but also we're all doing this unconsciously. So think about lunch. Think about how the food was presented, where it was in the room, the actual size of the vessels, whether we had trays, we didn't have trays. That all is going to influence the food that we pick and the amount that we eat and maybe the amount that we waste. So that's all really important. It all shapes the behavior that we make. So trying to sort of understand what drives our behavior, there's one sort of quite useful model to think about. And it's developed by the Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman, and it describes 2 systems of behavior. The first one is system 1. This is our fast, sort of habitual, automatic decisions. These are, I imagine, I actually can't ride very well. Maybe a tiny bit as a kid, but if you can ride, I imagine you don't have to think about it too much. It's quite automatic once you've learned. And maybe if something jumps out of the bush, maybe you automatically are going to sort of steer away from it. That's your system 1 response. But you also have your system 2 thinking, which is your deliberative, your analytical, when really considering the trade-offs, the costs and benefits of an action. This maybe is more like when you're actually learning to ride or learning to drive. Or maybe if you're at the races and you're deciding which horse to take a punt on, maybe you're really analyzing the difference. Or maybe if you're an expert, maybe you're going on your intuition, and maybe it's more of a system 1. So these are two ways to think about behavior. But changing behavior is really hard. So can we get the poll up here? The first poll. I've got 2 polls. This is the first poll. So, okay, so imagine into the future. This time next year, say it's a Wednesday next year, maybe the day before the NEF 21. What would you want your future self to be eating the night before? Just imagine in your mind what kind of dinner. Now imagine what you ate last night. Which one was healthier? 50-50. Ooh. We'll go for a couple of seconds more while they come in. Okay, but this is, I mean, the difference there is not stark, but it's quite a consistent finding that generally what we, it's carrying on. Can we exit the poll now? Generally what we find is what we want to do, if you're anything like me, what you want to do in the future is often different to what you actually do. So maybe in the future you're thinking, okay, I want a really healthy meal. When it comes to it, what you actually do is have pizza. Or, nothing wrong with pizza, but it's maybe not what you necessarily intended to do. So there's often this gap between our intentions and our actions. So I work at the Behavioural Insights team, which is a bunch of research scientists, behavioural economists, evolutionary biologists, behaviour scientists. And we were originally formed in number 10, working in a small team to try and apply behaviour science to government policy. We've now spun out and we work across the world and we work across different sectors, all sorts of things. But what we're trying to do is understand the drivers of human behaviour and then maybe how you can close this gap between what we want to do and what we actually do. And here's 4 key strategies to try and help us do that. So the first is we quite literally take the path of least resistance. Okay. So if you want to encourage a behavior, or discourage a different behavior, make it easier to do the behavior that you want, or make it harder to do the behavior that you don't want. So all of these can be applied to yourself if you're trying to change your own behavior, or if you're trying to encourage behavior change in a wider group or population. So number one, make it easy. And to do this, there's three things you can do. You can set intelligent defaults. I'll explain in a second. You can reduce the hassle it takes to do that behavior. And you can simplify. You can simplify information or simplify a process. So defaults. So we're creatures of habits. We tend to just, once we started doing something, or the initial setting for something, we don't tend to change it. So think about your phone. I'm not sure how many people have changed their ringtone or the sound of their alarm. Maybe some people, maybe not other people. Think about, in this instance, pensions. So before 2012, for workplace pensions, you had to opt in. And you'd think maybe our pensions, our financial future is quite important. Perhaps we would take maybe an hour to sit down and really work out what we should do. It turns out most people don't. So actually having people opt out of pensions massively boosted the amount that people started saving. And importantly, people are very happy about this. They're very happy that they had been opted in, and very happy that this decision had kind of been made, not necessarily for them, but made easier for them to do the thing that they intended to do anyway. We can think about this in our own lives, of stuff like the size of our plates is going to probably dictate the amount we put on a plate. Or, for instance, if we take a packet of biscuits to bed with us, maybe we'll finish the whole packet. If we put 3 on a plate, we might not have to go back and get more biscuits. Okay, this is another really important example. Reducing the hassle. So this is a trial that we ran, trying to encourage people to put loft insulation in their homes. We thought maybe it's the costs is going to be important. Maybe it's people's motivation to save energy or the environment that's going to be important. What it turned out was simply people didn't really want to deal with the hassle of going into their loft, dealing with spiders, dealing with all of their memories and their clutter. And that was the reason people weren't insulating their lofts. In another example, and this is a very significant finding, is when in medication, when things like paracetamol moves from bottles into packets, where you have to actually pop each one out, that significantly reduces the amount of misuse of that medication, simply make it a bit harder to misuse it. So we can reduce the hassle. We can also simplify. So we can simplify information, that's really important, but we can also simplify a process. In this example, we're working with doctors trying to reduce the amount of prescription errors when prescribing medicine. And what we found was actually simplifying the form, make it much easier for them to circle the dose, significantly reduced the amount of prescription errors, going from 95 to no prescription errors. 95%, sorry. Okay, so we covered making something easy. The other thing we need to think about is how can we make a behavior attractive? So not just making it appealing, but also actually attracting our behavior. And there's, again, 3 key things that we can think about when trying to do that. We can increase the salience of something to try and make it actually attract our attention, make it more obvious, literally attract our eyes to the thing. Maybe it's a message, or maybe it's a warning. We can make sort of information or messages or processes more personal, so they actually sort of appeal to us as people. And we can provide incentives. So George provided a great incentive of chocolate for actually getting on Slido. Classic example, it doesn't have to be money. Often we don't actually respond to monetary incentives. It could be something else. So here's a good example. This is Melbourne train station. They painted a nice piece of artwork on the stairs, and this massively boosted the amount of people using the stairs, not just during the day, but also in rush hour. Simply just making it more appealing to use the stairs. This was just in the summer, so unfortunately they changed. I think afterwards it became a big fizzy drink or something. This is a trial we did trying to get people to pay their road tax. And this is quite early on in the Behavioural Insights team, where a lot of our work was trying to show government applying these kind of insights can actually bring more money into government. So it turns out giving people, rather than just giving people the original letter asking them to pay their tax, road tax, presenting them with a bit more personalised information, such as this is actually your car, or in another trial, giving people a picture of the car that they were driving at the time that they were caught, massively increased the amount that they actually paid their tax. So really personalised that message. And again, thinking about incentives, we can think about like incentives for our own behaviour that we could provide ourselves. Maybe we give ourselves like a treat if we do something that we intend to do, or we can actually apply incentives to big organizations or companies. This is an example of the sugar tax introduced recently by the government, which had a successful aim of trying to get companies to reformulate their products to actually have less sugar in them. So they're focusing on the producer rather than the consumer in that instance. So make a behavior easy, make a behavior attractive. And this is probably my favorite one. We're social animals. Just like horses, we quite literally follow the herd. Maybe this is an evolutionary response to the fact that if everyone runs out of the room, it's probably best that we do as well and just assume everyone's doing the right thing as opposed to trying to work out the threat ourselves. But we can really draw upon our social influences to try and encourage behavior change. We can do this in 3 ways. We can highlight the good things that people are doing. So if you highlight the good things people are doing rather than the bad things, that tends to promote more behavior change in that direction. We can leverage the appropriate messenger to give information, or role models, or even our friends, because they're often big influences of our own behavior. And we can use reciprocity effects. So we're cooperative creatures, so if I do something for you, you're more likely to do something back for me. So a good example of this is, again, this is a trial based upon letters, trying to get doctors to reduce the amount of, reduce the antibiotics, reduce the amount of antibiotics they're prescribing. And to do this, simply told them if they were prescribing more than most other doctors. So if they're prescribing more than 80% of other doctors. This, and introducing also the messenger effect. This is from the chief medical officer, showing that this is a bit of important information. This, again, significantly reduced the amount of antibiotics prescribed. If we can think of our own lives, I'm massively influenced by David Attenborough. Generally, whatever he says, I'll probably do. So think about messengers if you're trying to influence other people's behavior. This is an interesting one. How do we get bankers to donate more to charity? So this is a trial we ran a few years ago, and this is, again, if we can get the poll up, please take a pick out of these 4 options. So a simple request, such as a letter, an endorsement from, in this case, quite a minor celebrity, a gift of sweets, or an email from a boss. Okay, I haven't got masses of time, so I'm going to move on. Email from boss coming up quite strongly there, and the celebrity endorsement. Okay, can we close the poll? So almost spot on. What we found was a combination of the sweets and the personal message from the boss was the most important factor in actually influencing bankers to give a day's work to charity. You would have thought a tiny thing of sweets, bankers can get as many sweets as they want, but this sort of bit of reciprocity effect seemed to have a big influence. Okay, lastly, and I'll make this timely because this is the timely section. If you want to encourage a behavior, think about how to make your future behavior more sort of important when you're making that decision right now, and think about when the most receptive you are to changing your behavior, or most receptive someone is to change their behavior. So you think about 3 things. Making the costs and benefits of future actions more obvious, helping people plan their behavior, and prompting people at timely moments. So if you want to get people to maybe invest in something which has a sort of an immediate cost but a future benefit, so in this case, more energy efficient dishwashers or washing machines, highlighting actually your lifetime savings at the moment of purchase is quite effective. Likewise, if you want to try and encourage, in this case, job seekers to get back into work, helping them plan, helping them literally write down what they intend to do when, makes it much more likely that they carry out that action. We all like to be consistent, so if we tell, this works most effectively when you make it public. If you make a public pledge, if you tell someone you're going to do it, you're more likely to actually carry it out. And this is the results from the trial we did with job seekers. And lastly, this is something that's really important, both for ourselves and for maybe influencing others, is at different moments we're more likely to actually be responsive to behavior change. So in this trial, we're working with trying to encourage people to adopt cycle-to-work schemes. And it turns out people who've just moved house are much more likely to adopt the scheme than people who haven't. And the reason for this is probably because when when we're already making a big change, when we're establishing new habits, we're much more likely to establish other new habits. So let's think in the case of equine welfare, maybe when we're getting a new horse, maybe when we're quite literally moving house or starting a new career, we might be more receptive at other points in time. Now, again, marketers know this quite well. There's a reason why sign-ups to the gym happen most on a Monday at the start of the month and the start of the year. And maybe that's something that we all may identify with. Okay, so that's the 4 key things I'd like you to take away. If you want to change your own behavior, other people's behavior, make that behavior easy, make it attractive, make it social, and make it timely. Cool. Thank you very much.